The key number to remember is Denver's 5-year, $70 million offer to Peyton Watson, because Watson wanted more than that. In fact, Watson wanted to clear the 5-year, $125 million contract Christian Braun received, even though Braun signed his extension a year earlier. That difference never got resolved, and Mark Stein reported that Watson was seriously considering taking the 1-year qualifying offer so he could enter unrestricted free agency next summer. Then, at 12:51 this afternoon, Shams Charania reported that the stalemate was finally over, but not in the way anyone expected. Peyton Watson was traded from the Denver Nuggets to the Los Angeles Lakers in a sign-and-trade agreement. Shams explained that Denver, already projected to be the league's only second-apron team, understood that matching Watson's actual asking price could create significant luxury tax consequences with the rest of the roster built around Jokic. So instead of risking that situation or letting Watson sit in restricted free agency limbo, Denver found a way to get value back through a sign-and-trade. Once the Lakers put real draft compensation on the table, Denver made the move. And that matters because Shams's explanation was specifically tied to the second-apron tax issue, rather than being presented as simple speculation. Then, just minutes later, Luka Dončić posted, "Been watching this kid's defense for years." Luka called Watson a real two-way piece and said he was exactly what the Lakers needed on the wing. That points directly toward the defensive weakness this Lakers roster has been carrying throughout the offseason. The strange part is that Denver reportedly didn't want to move Watson in the first place, so naturally the question becomes why everything changed so quickly. Denver's preference was reportedly to keep him if they could bring the number down, but once a legitimate trade partner offered real value, the second-apron tax consequences changed the calculation. And Shams had 3 reasons for being confident in the Lakers' side of this move. First, even after everything Los Angeles added this offseason, the Lakers still lacked a genuine switchable two-way wing defender in his prime, and Watson's only 23 years old. Second, J.J. Redick's system calls for versatile wings who can defend multiple positions while also spacing the floor, which lines up directly with Watson's skill set. That's a different fit from simply adding another player whose value is mostly on offense. So tell me in the comments, does adding a young, restricted free agent like Watson excite you more than the veteran additions the Lakers have already made this offseason? And third, the specific second-apron tax issue Shams reported gives the move a real front office explanation instead of leaving everything to speculation. Then there's the skeptical side, with Stephen A. Smith asking why the Lakers would surrender assets for a restricted free agent who already wanted out. That's a fair question when you're looking at whether both sides actually fit together. But the important part is that Denver didn't simply give Peyton Watson away for nothing. The sign-and-trade matters because Denver is getting actual compensation back instead of simply losing Peyton Watson. And Watson wanting more money than Christian Braun shows how much this situation centered on his belief in his own value rather than loyalty to either team. After 4 seasons as a high-upside role player, Watson has never really been paid at the level he believes he deserves, so getting a bigger role somewhere new gives him a chance to prove that. At the same time, there is a legitimate question about whether he's ready to handle a full-time, high-usage role, because his strongest stretches came when Denver's stars were unavailable due to injuries. Denver's roster situation makes the decision easier to understand because the second apron created difficult choices throughout the offseason.
Once Watson's asking price moved above Braun's number, he became the more expendable of Denver's 2 young wings when the tax consequences became serious. And nobody should be expecting Watson to arrive as a star because his role is much more specific than that. He's a two-way 3-and-D wing who can defend the opponent's best perimeter player while providing spacing around Luka and the rest of the offense. The production is also worth looking at because Watson averaged 14.6 points, 4.9 rebounds, and 1.1 blocks over 54 games last season. According to multiple reports, that represented a real jump and even surpassed Braun's numbers over the same stretch. That's the statistical argument behind Watson's camp believing he deserved more than the amount Braun received 1 year earlier. His development also explains why this trade carries so much significance for both teams. Watson entered the league out of UCLA as a raw athletic project and spent his first 2 seasons buried on Denver's bench behind a deep wing rotation. It wasn't until the last 2 years that he started receiving meaningful minutes, eventually leading to a 15-game stretch this past January when Jokic, Braun, Gordon, and Cameron Johnson were all unavailable at the same time. That forced Watson into a much larger role than Denver originally expected him to handle. There's also the locker room side of bringing a 23-year-old into a completely different organization, because getting established players to buy into that addition matters. Luka's public reaction stands out because he specifically pointed to Watson's defensive qualities instead of simply welcoming him to the team. That kind of response makes it clear this wasn't being treated as just another addition, but as a deliberate basketball move. Still, the biggest question remains whether Watson's breakout actually represents his sustainable level of play or was largely the result of unusual circumstances in Denver. Any team acquiring him has to consider whether those flashes can carry over when he's asked to handle a much bigger role across an entire 82-game season. The biggest reason the Peyton Watson move matters for the Lakers is pretty simple. He fills a real need as a young two-way wing, while Denver's tax situation gave both sides a reason to make the trade. And Sham's specific second apron explanation is important because it gives actual sourcing behind Denver's decision to move off its previous position. Then you have Luka Dončić's reaction, which is probably the clearest indication of how the Lakers view what Watson brings. The next thing I'm watching is exactly how much draft compensation Denver received and how quickly Watson handles the much bigger role waiting for him in Los Angeles. There's also a lot going on with the actual sign-and-trade structure that deserves attention. Denver gets tangible compensation for a restricted free agent it otherwise could have lost for nothing through a qualifying offer standoff next summer. At the same time, the Lakers get a path to acquire Watson through Denver's restricted free agency leverage instead of having to create separate outright cap space. Then you have J.J. Redick and the type of player he can potentially use Watson as. Redick has talked about valuing switchable wing defenders who can impact the game without needing the ball constantly in their hands. Watson's length, defensive versatility, and developing outside shot fit that profile, without forcing him into a role that doesn't match his strengths. But Los Angeles is still taking a real financial risk because this is a long-term commitment to a player who has shown potential without having a huge track record as a full-time rotation piece. The fit may look strong right now, but that doesn't automatically eliminate the uncertainty that comes with committing significant money to Watson. Denver's side matters too, because the Nuggets are getting actual draft compensation in return.
Even if those picks aren't headline-making assets, there's still meaningful value for a front office that could otherwise have watched Watson leave through the qualifying offer route next summer without getting anything back after 4 years of development. It's also unusual to see a restricted free agent this young with this kind of recent statistical improvement actually get traded instead of simply being retained by his original team. Teams normally work hard to keep ascending, cost-controlled talent like this, which makes Denver's tax situation look even more significant. In this case, the second apron pressure was strong enough to override the Nuggets' original preference to keep Watson. And the timing matters because neither side had much reason to let the situation continue dragging toward the regular season. With training camp already underway, resolving the situation sooner gives Watson a chance to get integrated and prepared before meaningful games begin. Christian Braun's extension from a year earlier also gives us a pretty interesting look at how Denver valued these two young players internally. Even though Watson produced more than Braun did by most statistical measures last season, Braun ended up with the larger guaranteed contract because Denver committed to him an entire year before Watson's situation became this complicated. And Watson's own approach to the negotiations is worth noting because reports indicate he cared more about long-term value and finding a real opportunity than simply taking the first extension Denver put in front of him. That tells you how seriously he viewed this point in his career and where he believed his trajectory could go. The reason Watson attracted so much attention around the league was his defensive versatility, especially his ability to guard positions 1 through 4 during stretches. That switchability is exactly what teams look for in playoff basketball, and Atlanta, the Clippers, and Milwaukee reportedly explored their own sign-and-trade possibilities before the Lakers ultimately got the deal done. There's also something pretty wild about the path Watson just took, considering he spent his first 2 seasons buried on Denver's bench and now suddenly has a much bigger role with real expectations attached to him.
For a player who had to fight for basically every minute he received, that is a pretty significant full-circle moment. But there's still a very real risk attached to this move because the Lakers are making a financial and roster bet on potential that hasn't completely arrived yet. If Watson keeps developing, the move can look like a valuable pickup. But if that progression stalls, the Lakers could end up paying heavily for upside that never fully materializes. This also lines up with Rob Pelinka's broader approach this offseason of combining established stars with young, cost-controlled talent instead of relying entirely on veteran additions. That mix of experience and upside is designed to keep the championship window open beyond a single season. And regardless of what happens next, Watson's camp appears to have accomplished what it wanted by turning its leverage into a legitimate opportunity rather than simply accepting Denver's original offer because the market might not develop.